Welcome back to the discussion, Zero Trust from Theory to Reality, sponsored by Akamai on Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. My guest today is Randy Wood, Vice President, U.S. Public Sector Sales at Akamai. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy. We just talked about the Marines and networks and the perimeter and how it changes and varies. So in different types of networks like this, how can you assess the architecture of a network effectively?
Yeah, so to be fair, this whole business of Zero Trust can be overwhelming. And it get a lot of inquiry from customers. Where do you start? How do you get started here? And a couple things come to mind. The first is I think it's prudent for agencies to perform a vulnerability assessment, right? What are the threats? What are the opportunities for phishing and malware and other bad malicious things? And in terms of attack vector, what's my vulnerability? And there's lots of ways to do that. And then second, maybe an agency would follow up with what I'd call a zero trust architecture assessment. And a couple things really stand out. The profiling of applications, where are your applications, what's mission critical, get a sense of that. The user profile, what are user expectations relative to connectivity on net, off net, again, back to wherever they are, the person is the perimeter. And then what's the device posture, what's the VPN infrastructure look like, for example, and then make some decisions about hey, easy things to get after in terms of application. Let's take this one application and let's zero trust enable it. Let's apply technology that's available today in ways that we've described to make that a zero trust ready enabled application.
Traditionally, a person would architect a network and talk about role-based access control and role-based, but today it's more networks and apps. So do you permit access to a network? Do you permit access to an app? How do you work this whole access question?
Yeah, so it's turned upside down on its head than what it previously was. Today, from the Akamai view of the world, is we provide access to applications only and not to networks. I don't want you on my network. I don't need you on my network, and that's true of me at Akamai. I don't even know what the Akamai network looks like. I have access to applications on an application by application basis where I'm authenticated and given the least amount of privilege and access based on what I need to do with that application. And that is an elegant, transparent experience with respect to security, right? The idea of password fatigue, we can overcome those problems, and I can have quick access, multi-factor authenticated access to applications that I need to do my job.
Earlier we talked about the amount of money the federal government spends on infrastructure and on legacy systems. And someone may think if you're moving away from a legacy system, that can give you all kinds of problems. And so where's this whole concept of moving away from legacy systems and maybe moving away from dated concepts like VPN? How does this fit in this discussion of zero trust?
Yeah, so again, back to kind of what we talked about in an earlier segment, the amount of equipment, security stack equipment that is in play today to provide a secure VPN application experience is breathtaking. And the investment, ongoing OpEx and CapEx investment to sustain that is significant. And so, we talk about the business value of zero trust in the context of applications and users, and if implemented correctly, and we can do this today, there's a real opportunity to decommission and up to eliminating that cost, that big hardware support and maintenance tail, and expose it in a secure, cloud-based, platform-based way. What's more, the number of the challenge of shortage of cybersecurity skilled professionals today, I think, is well known, and that problem only gets worse. There's just not enough smart cyber and experienced cybersecurity professionals in the workforce today. So by adopting a zero trust approach, we really have an opportunity to solve two problems: this massive hardware footprint problem and the shortage of security smart enabled people we require less of, because we're consuming from a secure cloud-based platform architecture.
Enterprise architects talk about access, and security people talk about stacks. And so we got stacks. They talk about this layer and that layer because it's part of network talk, but also stacks of different tools and everything else. And so how can our existing security people understand this concept of zero trust? Is it an obstacle for them?
Yeah, I think it's a new way of thinking, and rightfully so. It's almost it's almost new theology, right? You're being exposed to a whole new theology.
We've always done it this way, Randy.
We've always done it this
Right.
way, and rightfully so. And so there's no shame there. This is the reality of things. The recognition, though, is that there's a better way to do it. There's a more efficient, a more elegant, a more cost-effective way to do it, and provide a much better outcome, a much better result, a much better experience in ways that I've described. You know, the idea of decommissioning VPN infrastructure and privileged Wi-Fi is heresy to some people, because this is how we've always done it. But surprisingly, as we talk to more federal and DoD and civilian agencies, those are number 2, 3, 4 objectives in their short midterm architecture plans.
I keep thinking about the last 15, 20 years. You'd actually have a hard drive and you'd have a firewall protecting it, and the firewalls sometimes are hardware as well. What's happened in the last 15 years, it's all become software defined. So now we have a network that can become software defined, and so it allows you to dynamically allow access and enable zero trust, where years ago with that hardware limitation you couldn't even consider it. And this actually reduces cost, doesn't it?
It does, and it's one effect, it's one outcome of the cloud-based thinking. You know, the cloud is affected how we do business in really remarkable ways and in very short order. And I think this is just the next step in this cloud journey, right? And now we have ways to accelerate cloud adoption, cloud migration, again, back to my very first point, by enabling a better level of confidence and therefore experience in these application access opportunities.
When a federal IT professional is looking at applying zero trust, are there concepts that they kind of leave out? And can someone like you look at that and say, maybe do some kind of a gap analysis and say, oh, you forgot X, Y, and Z? Where are the holes in the arguments?
Yeah, so here's what I tell you. We are going from concept to reality in zero trust, and there are certainly gaps that need to be closed. Compliance and regulation and accreditation and FedRAMP, all those things we need to still pay attention to. And so those are important steps that investments have to be made. And they're being made. Akamai is making more FedRAMP investment. But zero trust is happening now. It's happening this year. From an Akamai perspective, it's an application platform-based, identity-aware opportunity that's real.
I'd like to thank today's guest, Randy Wood, Vice President, U.S. Public Sector Sales, Akamai. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy, and you're listening to Federal News Radio, part of the Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search Zero Trust.